Nearly 20 years ago, when I was 17 years old, most of my friends, if not all of them, were only interested in trying to get girls into bed. Me, the Aprilia RS125. It was the bike I wanted. And through being 16, I worked and worked to get the deposit ready to buy and treat myself to a brand new one. For reasons I'm not going to go into in this video, it didn't happen. But turning 37 in a few weeks, it makes sense 20 years later to build the bike that I always wanted in the collection. So let's get to work. Good afternoon YouTube, and welcome back to the channel and episode 3 of Aprilia RS125. As you've probably seen from the intro, we have a donor. So what we're going to do now is give it a good going through, make sure everything's in order, because it's been off the road since 2011. So she certainly needs some love. But we've done this before on the channel, as those who followed with the RSV. So let's wheel back to this morning on the camera footage, and then we'll crack on with giving it a deep clean. So a big thanks to you guys and girls that all reached out in the comments and made this happen. You guys have been fantastic with your input, and it's great to feel like we're all on this adventure, or painful journey as it may entail as we go further down the line. But Ben Davis, legend, reached out and said, look, I think I might have just the bike you like. And as always, they're never round the corner. They're always a million miles away when I go to collect a bike. One day I just want to be able to buy a bike and it'd be, oh, I'm actually only 10 minutes down the road. It's just never the case. I seem to drive all over the country for cars and bikes over the years. But rant over on that. We set off from Sunny Staines to it's Walsall, which was sort of above Birmingham, to collect the bike from Ben. And laying first eyes on it, he asked me, are you happy? And I said, you know what? This is exactly what I want. It's going to be perfect for the restoration. So Ben had the bike for many years. It'd been stored in the shed, so this is a genuine barn find. But unfortunately, there were a few issues along his ownership. 3 engine rebuilds, and I think that's enough to put a bad taste in anyone's mouth, especially when you're a young man and all your money's either going on alcohol, girls, or your bikes. And if your bikes are taking all the funds, it's no longer a fun hobby. But he did keep hold of it. And when he reached out, he said, do you know what, it'd be awesome to see it back on the road. So let's hope we can do Ben proud on this build. And it's wicked to see a GP1, because they were quite a rare bike. I don't remember seeing a lot of them when I was younger, and I really do love the colour scheme, but it's obviously not going to go with our build. So a lot of the bodywork will be removed. But first eyes on the bike, looked absolutely perfect, exactly what I wanted. And just like when we picked the RSV up, it's never just a quick process getting it out of the house. A little bit easier this time, but we did have to walk the bike down the side of Ben's house, get it loaded in the van, and obviously stop for a cheeky little Golden Arches for the journey home. I had a good 2-hour road trip back. But yeah, absolutely thrilled to bits, and thanks again Ben for getting in contact to make this happen. I know, you guys all lost your minds in the video on the RSV when I started it with 8-year-old fuel in there, but I was optimistic, and I've got that good gut feeling again, so we've got to give it a whirl, haven't we? We've got to see what happens when I hit that start button, so let's do it. As Johnny Tran would say, we got no engines, do we? It didn't run, because as you probably saw, for those who didn't know, it hasn't got an engine, and that was part of the deal for getting the bike. I said I wanted a rolling chassis, Ben has delivered, we've got an engine in there, we're going to get it in there. That sound clip was actually from Spencer's bike back last summer, so yeah, it was never going to run, but well, hopefully a few of you enjoyed it. Digging out the trusty car cleaning stuff, is suitable for the bike as well. Well, almost, as you'll see in these next couple of clips. Now for me, this is super satisfying, and because the bike had not been washed in so many years, there was plenty of grime to get off, as you'll see. Starting with the snow foam, I let it work its wonders, and some wheel cleaner. And while we're on the subject of the bike, what did happen to that engine? I'm sure you're wondering. Well, I did have a discussion with Ben, the previous owner, and as I said in the intro, it had seized 3 times, it had been put away, the bike had been moved from place to place, and the engine ended up somewhere where, unfortunately, it can't be retrieved. He has assured me if that ever does happen that he can get it back, he will, but I think it's pretty safe to say she's long gone. But fortunately, we have that shiny piece in the garage. So let's let the cleaning begin. With the snow foam working wonders, sitting there happily soaking away on all the panels and wheels, I got the agitating brush out and started working some wonders with the clocks, as you'll see very shortly. Where things didn't go as well as I'd hoped was on the wheels. Unfortunately, Ben, the previous owner, had been doing some commuting on the bike, and there was a lot of chain oil that had obviously had many years to bond to the wheels. And the rear wheel, oh man, the Bilberry wheel cleaner I was using was removing maybe 10-15% of it from what I could see, but I could still feel under the agitating brush there was a lot of grime to be removed still. Again, armed with a Bilberry wheel cleaner, I set to work on cleaning the caliper discs. Just years of grime and obviously stored had just bonded everything together. And as you can see from this clip, super satisfying to see all that dripping off from the front wheel. I then went over the entire bike again, washing all the snow foam off in an attempt to remove as much as the dust without touching the panels. And as you'll see shortly, I wasn't too precious about the bodywork. It's pretty scratched up, it's got a lot of marks from storage, but it's not an issue, we're not keeping that. But once it was rinsed down, look how nice the clocks and the calipers came up, almost looking factory fresh there. I'm not sure why I continue to power on with this rear wheel cleaning. It's going to be much easier when it's off the bike. But I thought, you know what, we're here, we've got the pressure washer out, I want to see what the paintwork's like underneath, and I continued again with the Bilberry wheel cleaner, and to be honest with you, it just wasn't touching it. So with that left soaking away, I made the decision to start cleaning the bodywork further, and I hit the bike again with another load of the Built Hamber snow foam, got the agitating brush out and just worked around all the panels, all the gaps, anywhere I could really see, because although it was going into the workshop to be stripped down, it's certainly nicer to have it all clean rather than an absolute state turning the workshop into a pigsty with mud and grime coming out everywhere. With the bike rinsed down and left to dry, it was clear that rear wheel was still in quite a state. Loads of chain grime, oil, grease was just not budging, and Spence kindly was over and said, look, I'll run you down to Halfords, let's go and get some proper cleaner. Now I stuck with using the Halford stuff because it is, I think, well at least I know it's not acidic, so it shouldn't damage anything. I've used it in the past on engine bays and it works really well, and as you can see here, certainly a massive improvement, and unfortunately underneath the wheels didn't look fantastic anyway, so my gut was we were going to be doing a wheel refurb at some stage, but now happy that it wasn't absolutely caked in grime. Whilst the little 125 was certainly not a heavy bike, especially without an engine in it, it was clear the flat tyres were making this a chore to push around. So I decided it was time to put 40 psi in the front and back tyres and see if they would hold air. Now obviously we've got to refurb the wheels, we're not going to keep these tyres because they are well past it. So they will be changed at some stage, but just for manoeuvring the bike around, I'm proud to report it held pressure, and in true British fashion, the weather decided to let me down 10 minutes later.
So I reckon probably a pot of gold around about near Arbors.
Yeah, I wish. I'll be done in there, mate.
So I need to wind the clock back a few days ago, and we're going to be talking about the engine and some interesting developments. I say interesting, potentially not amazing, but not bad really. So Paul from PJME actually reached out and contacted me as he'd seen the episodes regarding the engine build, and he had some news for me. And I guess, well, what do you guys make of it? Let me know in the comments. When I spoke to Paul, he said, look, I don't do full engine rebuilds. I do obviously provide a lot of parts for the RS125. I do a lot of services with crank rebuilds, rebores, but I don't do it as a case of you send your engine down, I fully rebuilt it and it's sent back. So I was like, so I don't really know who built the engine. Paul said obviously looking at the cylinder head, the barrel, there's a good chance it's been through his workshop to have that bit done. A good chance he could have done the crank as well, but he certainly didn't put the rest of the engine together. And do you know what? He was absolutely brilliant. I spoke to him probably for a good hour on the phone, just all things RS125. Absolute killer passion for these bikes. It's clear when I was talking to him, and just full of knowledge. So the good news is we're going to be doing a future episode on the RS125 engine. I'm hoping Paul's going to be able to put a lot of these forum whispers to bed that have been going around for many, many years. And I discussed the squish settings with him and obviously the readings I had from my engine, and we've actually sent off the barrel and head to Paul to get this completely dialed in. So yeah, there's going to be more of that on the next episode. But yeah, if you're watching, Paul, big thanks again, mate. I really appreciate your time the other night, and I look forward to getting this engine working absolutely perfectly once you've worked your final wonders on it. So back to the current time, we need to get the rolling chassis into the garage, and unfortunately I don't have a massive amount of workspace. So the RS125 that came with the engine, so the frame, swing arm, all the nice polished bits, I needed to flat pack back down again. And a little discovery since the last video. Now, for those of you that watched episode 1, I mentioned that there was some modifications to the frame where the headstock had unfortunately been damaged with a mounting point, or had been cut off. And to be honest with you, I did a HPI check, bike came back as a category D, so not end of the world, it could still be used on the road, but I thought, you know what, I don't want to use this one. I've got a really nice frame on the bike from Ben. Well, register wise, it's got low owners, hasn't had a lot of ownership changes, and it just made more sense because it was HPI clear, and the frame attachment for where the sort of frame for the front of the bike goes to hold all the fairing is all intact. So yeah, that is going to be now the chosen frame. I'm obviously going to use a lot of the parts I've got from this leftover engine build that came for free, so I'm certainly not disappointed. Calipers, discs, etc. are all in much better order than the ones on Ben's bike. But yeah, that's going to be the plan moving forward. With the polished RS125 all wrapped up and put away, well, in part, still bits you'll spot around the workshop, it was time to move the donut into place, ready for the strip down to see what surprises were in store for me next. With the bike on the ramp and placed on paddock stands, it was time to remove the fuel tank. And as you can see, yep, we got no engine in there. So the next job was to start removing all the bodywork, and that case was just removing the fairings. The fairings essentially are pretty straightforward on the RS125 in all honesty, although I did have an issue with the left-hand mirror not coming undone. So we'll come back to that, but for the moment it came off with the nose cone fairing. With the nose fairing removed, you can now see where the snow foam didn't quite get to everything to clean in there, but this was to be expected unfortunately. Whilst apart, I thought, you know what, should we see if the clocks work, or even the loom for that matter? So I took the trusty GSXR 600 battery that had been sat on the trickle charger, rigged it up, and no, nothing's working. But we'll come back to that again because I didn't give up and it certainly wasn't a big problem that caused it. But just for the time being, we carried on stripping the bike down. The bike came with the standard 28mm carburettor, so obviously we weren't going to need that as we were putting the big boy 34mm on there, so that was removed and put to one side for the time being. I've got to hand it to Aprilia. They do some cool things, and this, especially for the age and for just a 125, has some really nice quick release fairings. You remove the clips, the side fairings can be pulled away, and there's just a couple of screws in the bottom holding it onto the V-piece. And when I remove the left hand side, that's when I spotted the problem with the power. So there's some points there that I assume will be bolted into the engine to link up the negative. So what I did was just link them out with a bolt, and yep, you guessed it, we were back in business. The clock's powered up, the tail lights work, the indicators flashed a little bit fast because obviously the fronts are disconnected. For those that you don't know, if you remove one of the indicators on the side, it will blink really quickly because the resistance has changed. But essentially everything seems to be in good order, and I even did a quick test with the temperature gauge as well, which all thankfully works perfectly. So I'm going to call it a night there. It's getting freezing cold out. We've got it pretty stripped down now. All the bodywork's off. Garage is an absolute bomb site, unfortunately, again. But before we go, final thing I wanted to show you guys, which I was going on about in the last engine. So this is the standard 28mm carburetor that actually came with the bike, obviously no engine. And this is the larger 34mm. And as you can see, it is noticeably larger on the intake diameter. If I spin that around, you'll see what actually goes into the motor. Look at that. So that's the party piece. This bike was never given from factory, and yeah, I look forward to getting that on, obviously in much better condition than the factory 28. But yeah, I'm really excited, guys. It's obviously still a long way from completion. I mean, look how pitted this frame is. It's going to need some work to bring it back. The RSW even has a black swing arm, so probably going to use, where is she, down there, the better one. But yeah, I mean, look at the like insulation stuff as well. Strangely satisfying to squeeze, but it's just dissolving apart. But yeah, surprisingly, even with the color of that brake fluid, the brakes still work. It still backs off, and colour of that fluid is disgusting in there for whatever, 15 years old, something like that. So yeah, until next time, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and as I say, we're going to have some good progress on this now. We've got a good chassis to go with, all HPI clear, just needs a bit of love.
Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, an Aprilia RS125, the 17-year-old's wet dream. And today we're going to be taking it out on the road to see if it's as good as it was 10 years ago when I last rode one.